Big thanks to Linwood for the voice work. This one relies so much on having a good voice. I'm really glad I didn't have to be the one voicing him. It wouldn't be very good.
And then they expanded into other star systems, turning planets into machines and destroying everything natural.
I also like the implications with this one. Is he just another human soul trapped here? How does he survive? How long has he been there? What did he see? The player asks all these questions and, eventually he might get some answers, but in some way it's too late now. It's a very interesting concept, very subtle, and quite fitting into the overall atmosphere of this place.
Harvested to make them suffer like never before, even as ghosts.
The Blind Prophet is a sound-based NPC. It uses a regular civilian model from the base game and doesn't interact with the player in any way. He just cowers in some random corner, very occasionally moving around a little bit but never too far. But he talks a lot, a whole lot. And in this silence and solitude of the environment, most players will track him down based solely on his speech. The closer you get, the better you can hear him as his voice gets louder and more clear. Once you do find him, you can stop for a while and listen to his maniacal ramblings, or you can put him out of his misery. He has a couple event handlers attached to him as always. If you decide to shoot him, you can catch a glimpse of how he survived in the world, or maybe what he really was. But the most interesting thing about him is his spawn system. After all, if you watched any video about the environment itself, you know that it's randomly generated around the player, which means there's only so much environment around the player at any time, and the madman can be heard from much farther away. This is possible because of a system of proxy sounds that play around a specific place. If the player is within a large radius, the first set of sounds starts playing. These sounds are quite loud and can be heard from far away. These can direct the player in a particular direction, but it isn't clear where exactly they come from. Once the player gets closer to about 60 meters, which is roughly the distance at which new things spawn, the distant sounds are replaced with nearby sounds. These help the player pinpoint the exact position much better and are much clearer. Around the same time, the game looks around the position where all the sounds are playing for a light. If it finds one, it moves the Prophet NPC there. If the Prophet spawns, he plays the sounds instead, and all proxy objects are removed. Now it's up to the player to locate him and decide his fate. But if the Prophet doesn't spawn, the spawn point is moved and distant sounds start playing again from the new place, and so on until he finally does spawn. Should the Prophet spawn and then a chunk around him unloads because the player heads in a different direction, a proxy object once again replaces him in producing all necessary sounds, and depending on the distance from player, plays appropriate sounds. The Prophet himself is immune to fall damage, so he just falls on the floor and is eventually moved away by his script, or moved back into a freshly spawned chunk of environment if the player is close enough once more. So really, instead of spawning, it's just moving one existing NPC around. The Prophet is a unique NPC that exists from the start to the end of the mission or his death, and moves between places far away from player and freshly spawned chunks, depending on how close the player is.